thank you for my box since we don't have the up and down one, right? I know. I know. I'll move it. Well, good morning, everyone. Today we're going to talk a little bit about savings. On July 4th, we are celebrating America's 250th birthday. We Republicans, we believe in patriotism. We actually love America. Compare and contrast that to the other side. This is a monumental milestone and a truly exciting opportunity to celebrate the things that make our country great. And that thing is our people, its history, and our enduring values. But that's not the only milestone. Republicans are also celebrating the 1-year anniversary of the Working Families Tax Cuts, which has provided historic tax relief to hardworking Americans. And remember, I say this every single week, every single Democrat voted to raise your taxes. So I find it kind of comical that they're talking about gas prices and how much this 3-month gas price window has affected the American people. And you know what? It has for 3 months, let's be honest. But why aren't they talking about the fact that they voted for a permanent tax raise, not for 3 months, but forever, because they all voted to raise your taxes? They forget that little footnote at the end of their little commercial that they run. So remember, every single Democrat voted to raise your taxes. And I hope you all ask them that, well, under President Trump, gas prices were maybe up for 3 months. You voted to raise gas prices forever. What do you say about that? Because last I checked, forever's a lot longer than 3 months. So I'm curious what their answer is when you ask them those questions. But with the Working Families Tax Cuts, Republicans stepped up to fill the most fundamental duty of government. We successfully funded the vital border security. We backed our law enforcement, and we invested in safer skies. So safety is important to us as Republicans as well. Far too many Americans the last few years have brought stories that never should have been brought or never should have been talked about. Parents worrying about fentanyl making its way into their schools. Families who have lost loved ones because dangerous criminals crossed the border and were allowed in our community and then released over and over and over again. Travelers wondering whether the air traffic control system they're relying on is equipped for the demands of modern air traffic control. These aren't political issues for people who are living them. They're personal issues. Just last week, I sat down with law enforcement, local leaders, and angel families in my district. Parents, siblings, and loved ones whose lives have been forever changed by the fentanyl crisis. We listened as families shared stories no parents should ever have to tell, and siblings should never have to live through. Empty seats at the dinner table, phone calls that changed their lives forever, milestones that will never be able to be celebrated. One of those stories came from one of my constituents, Jack Swan, who lost his only brother, Drew, to an opioid overdose. Drew wasn't a statistic. He was a son, he was a brother, and he was a young man with a future. He dreamed of becoming a successful businessman or serving others as a youth minister. His family should be watching those dreams unfold today, but instead they're left carrying a loss that can never be healed. For 250 years, Americans have expected their leaders to uphold a simple promise, a promise to protect the country, enforce the laws, and create conditions for people to thrive. That's exactly what we included why we included major safety investments in the Working Families Tax Cuts bill. We're securing the border by finishing the wall, and we're providing the manpower for our frontline officers that they've been asking for. We're also strengthening efforts to combat drug trafficking to support law enforcement, and we're modernizing our air traffic control systems to ensure Americans can travel safely and confidently. The contrast here couldn't be more straightforward. Every single Democrat voted against those safety measures. Every single Democrat voted to make your communities less safe. Every single Democrat took the side of the criminal, not the victim. That's the contrast, and it couldn't be more clear. And I'm going to remind everybody again, every single Democrat thinks the government is a better steward of your hard-working tax dollars than you are, because every single Democrat voted to raise your taxes. So while they want to talk about a 3-month blip in gas prices, ask them what they think about a forever tax raise, and ask them why they voted to lower your taxes. Ask them why. Why did you vote to raise every single American's taxes? Why? I'm just curious as to what their answer is. Republicans believe government has a basic responsibility to protect its citizens, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're making our communities safe, our borders more secure, and our country stronger. And now I'll turn it over to talk about one of those issues to our Chairman of Financial Services, Mr. Franchillo. I'll get the box for you. You won't need that.
Well, good morning, everybody. I want to say that it's been a long-standing road for House Republicans working with Senate Republicans to do something that Tim Scott, the chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, and I promised our colleagues over 2 years ago that we would follow through with some of the promises made actually by President Reagan, that we would cut red tape, cut bureaucracy, hold HUD accountable, and provide sticks and carrots to local communities to lower the cost of housing in this country. Housing prices since the pandemic have skyrocketed, and along with that, we've had high interest rates as the Fed has responded to Joe Biden's 40-year high in inflation. High interest rates, high costs have really burdened a lot of our families to where the average young person trying to buy a home today is 40. I bought my first house at 30. So I recognize that, and I empathize with it, because the single family mortgage rate when I bought my first house was 15% fixed for 30 years. 15% fixed for 30 years. So saving that money, having that down payment, having something competitive, we all empathize that here. We all know about the burden of saving and having that first home. This bill lowers the cost per square foot, gives incentives to blue states and red states to cut their burdensome zoning and development regimes that cause it to not be built in a lot of communities and not be built affordably. And it increases accessibility. Republicans in the House, we want to hold HUD accountable, one of the least accountable agencies in the federal government. Just in Little Rock, I have investigations going on Jacksonville, Maumelle, North Little Rock, and Little Rock public housing agencies for mismanagement. So who's responsible for that? HUD is ultimately responsible for oversight of our public housing so that our tenants have a safe, clean, affordable place to stay and try to grow their families. Last night, Emanuel Cleaver on the House floor, a Democrat from Kansas City, summarized it pretty well from his perspective, a guy who grew up in public housing in East Texas. He said, we always had a home in our family, but we didn't always have a house to put it in. It's a really touching moment on the House floor. This isn't about suddenly that a bill is too Democratic or too Republican. This bill is for the American people. And it's center-right Republican policy, much of it derived from Ronald Reagan's own commitment to reform HUD. In this bill, we're legislating for the first time since 1982 new building codes for the Department of Housing and Urban Development on manufactured housing, on modular housing. This lowers the cost whether you're in a rural area or an urban area. So this is a good supply-side bill. And when you combine it with what we did for community banking, for Main Street community banks across the country, it's a real win. Who provides the capital to build houses in this country? 6 out of 10 home loans in this nation are loaned to a builder or to a couple building a house from a bank under $10 billion. Our community banks make 60% of the home construction loans in this country. And we've married those ideas of capital supply side, cutting red tape, holding HUD accountable, and making what HUD programs we have more forthright, more effective. We took out environmental reviews so that some housing department in Little Rock, Arkansas can use home funds to build a house. They have to go through an environmental review? Really? Come on. It's nuts. And that's where we found consensus between Republicans and Democrats on both sides of the aisle to pass this bill with large majorities. And I want to thank John Thune, Mike Johnson, Steve Scalise, leadership working with the 2 committee chairs in both chambers to let the process play out. Let's show the American people what legislating looks like. Let's show the American people how you bring together and do something on a bicameral basis. And we did that. And we did that in conjunction with President Trump and his priorities, which are reducing regulation, enhancing community banks. And one of his goals announced in the State of the Union was he doesn't want a mom and a dad trying to buy that first home to find out that they were outbid for cash by some institutional investor at some big company off in New York or somewhere. It's a legitimate issue. And Tim Scott and I found a way to put that into law that, in our view, meets the president's test, but absolutely will not reduce capital flowing into housing, which has been my top goal. Lower the cost of housing, make it more affordable, more accessible, encourage the banks to lend more that have been shut down since the global financial crisis in 2008. And this bill does that. And so I'm proud of the work that both chambers struggled through. For those of you who cover this every day, you know the back and forth between the House and Senate. But it's a successful today, and I'm proud of the work of the House and Senate to get this to get people to yes. And so I yield back.
Well done.
All right. Excuse me. Yeah, great job, French. You and your committee. All right. This week, House Republicans are once again demonstrating that our focus is on governing. Thanks to the excellent leadership of Chairman Tom Cole and the Appropriations Committee, we've already passed 2 appropriations bills for the fiscal year 2027. And this week, we're going to pass 2 more. Since 1990, Congress has only passed all appropriations bills on time twice. In 1995 and in 1997, when Republicans controlled both the House and the Senate. I don't know when it became an anomaly for Congress to get its job done on time, but House Republicans are going to do what we were sent here to do. We're going to govern. When Nancy Pelosi controlled the House, she delayed the appropriations process so Democrats could appease their far-left Marxist base. With Republicans in charge, we're returning to regular order. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Passing single-subject funding bills ending waste, fraud, and abuse in government programs. So if there's a government shutdown after September 30th this year, it will once again be entirely on Democrats. Republicans are doing the work we were hired to do. And we're on track to get all 12 appropriations bills on time, done on time this time. This week, we're voting on funding to strengthen our national security, unleash our energy dominance, rein in wasteful government spending, and advance our America First agenda. I know there are people back home who have a distorted view of Congress because the corrupt media fails to cover the historic wins our House Republican majority continues to achieve. House Republicans are going to be the party that governs and delivers because that's what the American people sent us here to do. And with that, I turn it over to our leader, Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Whip. I first want to express my condolences to Hakeem Jeffries for the devastating defeat that the voters of New York imposed upon him last night in his own backyard in Democrat primaries. You could call it the Bolshevik Revolution of 2026, but the Mandami takeover of the Democrat Party is official now. We've been talking about it for months, this move to the Marxist socialist left by the Democrat Party. They've become an unrecognizable party. You cannot recognize who the Democrats are anymore. This is surely not your father or grandfather's Democrat Party. They've fully embraced socialism. You look at some of the things that they talk about. It's, they want to defund the police. They want to basically just get rid of the free market capitalist system that we have. And they are backing it up with their votes here in Congress. Lisa talked about it. Our conference chair talked about it in relation to the working families tax cut. Today we look at global oil prices and they just dropped below $75 a barrel this morning. That's because of President Trump's leadership. And it's also because Republicans worked with President Trump to lower gas prices, to put smart energy policy in place so that we can produce our own energy. Now that the president has an agreement, an MOU with Iran, you've seen those prices drop dramatically in the last few days. That would not have happened if we didn't pass laws that opened up American energy exploration everywhere from ANWR in Alaska down to the Gulf of America. We opened it up and every single Democrat voted no because they want higher gas prices. Democrats are not happy about it. They talk about gas prices, but when you see them dropping, it's clear that the reason those prices are dropping is because we passed smart energy policies that every Democrat opposes. You're going to continue to see this drumbeat of Republicans focusing on helping make life more affordable for working families on every front. Chairman Hill just talked about it with the housing bill, a really important bill to lower housing costs. We delivered for American families. We did it for energy costs. We're doing it for a number of other issues, and we're not done. We're still bringing bills to the floor to address, of course, the funding of government, to have proper, responsible funding of government. Going to keep moving those appropriations bills. NDA is going to be coming up next week to properly fund our nation's defense. We've got a major transportation bill. The surface transportation bill is moving through the committee process. It's been through two committees. It's got Ways and Means still before it comes to the House floor. And I'm sure the speaker's talked about it because the speaker's been involved in this directly too. We've been working hard on a Reconciliation 3.0 bill. We've done 1.0, 2.0, two reconciliation bills passed with only Republican votes because Democrats just don't care anymore. They don't care about national security. They've all voted against funding our Department of Homeland Security. And what we're focused on now is fraud, trying to get fraud addressed with Reconciliation 3.0. We are not done working and delivering for the American people while the Democrats are fighting to see how far left to the socialist left they can go. And we're proud that we're led by our Speaker, Mike Johnson.
Thank you. Glad French Hill is here. Chairman Hill did an extraordinary job in the housing bill. We'll talk about that in a moment. But I've got to address a very sobering reality that is facing the country this morning. I did it with the House Republicans, and I was pretty animated this morning. I was up late last night, as I'm sure many of you were, and you saw the result of this latest, these primary elections for the Democrat Party. The headlines this morning say it all. I've got a collection of them here. Socialist earthquake, one of them said. Mamdani candidates sweep New York House races. These are socialists. These are Marxist in their ideology. Next headline, Mamdani hails new chapter for Democrats, one of the Chirons said this morning on the news. Hakeem Jeffries, my counterpart, the Democrat leader here in the House, was booed at some of these return parties last night. You saw that on social media and some of the clips. When he was being interviewed on the screen, the crowds in New York, in his own backyard, in the Bronx, in one of these districts, were booing him. And they shouted, "You're next." Hakeem Jeffries has a tall task ahead of him right now. He's got to go out and somehow make a credible pitch to Democrat establishment donors that that's a good national investment right now. That's a tough one to make. He has just proven that he cannot even hold the line in his own backyard. How can he possibly defend against the Marxist march around the country in these other districts? This is not your father's Democrat Party, as we see all the time. Last night, among the incumbents who lost, Adriano Espaillat, who's chair of the Democrats' Hispanic Caucus, Dan Goldman, who was mocked for his Jewish heritage in a coffee shop in New York and maligned online because of that. The Democrat Party, the socialists, the Marxists have nominated some of the most radical candidates to ever run for office, and they're running for Congress. The insurgent left is on the rise. I was reminded all last night and this morning about the warning, the admonition from the Gipper, President Ronald Reagan. And he reminded us constantly, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. And he said, it's got to be fought for, it's got to be protected, it's got to be passed along to the next generation so that they too will know the same liberty, opportunity, and security that we've known and frankly too often take it for granted. He said, freedom is not passed along in the bloodstream. It's got to be fought for. And these are the times that Reagan was warning about. He was warning about communism overseas. Now it is on our own shores. And it is a very serious time, and every American needs to wake up and understand the threat. I want to share with you some of the lowlights, some of these candidates who are emerging through these through the processes. Last night made crystal clear, as Leader Scalise said, that Zoran Mandami and AOC and Bernie Sanders have just taken full control of the Democrat Party, of what was left of it. Across the country, Democrats have candidates winning primaries and rising through the ranks. Here's a few of them. Vang in California, one of the Democrats, she won't say the Pledge of Allegiance. Hamaway in New Jersey, Democrat candidate, socialist candidate, has ties to Al-Qaeda and other terrorists. Chevalier won last night in New York over Hakim's counter endorsement. She says she wants to abolish the border. She doesn't want a border for the country. Mendoza in Arizona wants to decriminalize trans prostitution. Apparently that's the thing. James in Iowa wants to apologize for being white. Garriott in Iowa performed a Satanist wedding. And Bennett in New Jersey stopped going to church because Trump voters were there. This is just a sampling. And these kind of people have been popping up. You've been hearing me say for weeks, there are many Mamdanis popping up all around the country. It is a dangerous thing. This is not a joke. We're in a fight right now to save the republic. And every American needs to take this seriously. You need to wake up. This upcoming midterm election is not the midterm elections of years ago. This is going to decide the direction of the country. Are we going to maintain our status as a constitutional republic on our 250th anniversary? Or are we going to make a new choice and go down some road towards a communist utopia? That's the choice right now. We've been saying for months it's a contrast election. We've been saying it's a contrast between common sense and crazy. That's exactly what's going on. They give us new illustrations every day. And these radical candidates are self-describing, they're self-identifying as Marxist. They want to fundamentally transform this country. And sadly, many of these Democrat candidates and their voters just don't have the same zeal and affection for America. They don't appreciate the freedom that we have in this country. They're not even going to celebrate on July 4th. There's a new Gallup NBC poll that came out. Did you see that? Only 29% of Democrat voters that they polled said they're proud to be an American. What happened to the Democrat Party? They compared the poll from just 20 years ago, where it was 90%, because that's where Republicans are, above 90%. 29%. Over half of Democrats now say they would rather live in another country. What a split screen we're seeing. Right now, we're triumphantly hosting the World Cup games all around the country. And we're seeing people from different countries come and get a little taste of America, a little taste of freedom, of our culture and our society, and they appreciate it so much more than these socialists running for Congress. Fans across the country are truly enjoying our world-class facilities and the incredible atmosphere on the field and off the field. Thanks to social media, we're seeing a lot of these. This has been encouraging to see. The visitors appreciate what we have. Dutch travelers are in all Buc-ee's. German players took a midnight trip to the Waffle House. It's the greatest thing you've ever seen. English fans are roaming the Everglades. Japanese tourists marveling over free chips and salsa at a Mexican restaurant in Texas. Don't forget your blessings. People from Europe and Latin America, many countries around the world, many of whom, here's the key, they grew up under repressive state-controlled economies. They've never known freedom. They've never known these kinds of things. And they're seeing them for themselves, the genius of America's system. A system that rewards risk-takers and entrepreneurs and job creators and innovators and people who create jobs for others and expand the economy and opportunity and broaden the pathway out of poverty for more people. That's what the Republicans stand for. That's what French Hill fought for in the housing bill, to give more people a chance, to restore the American dream. That's what we promised to the voters, and that's what we are delivering. The irony is, and it is a sad irony, and I'm so disturbed this morning. Y'all know me, I'm a happy warrior. I like to be optimistic and happy. This is a very disturbing trend. Visitors around the world marvel at what our free system of free enterprise is built while rising socialist, Marxist, Democrat candidates are trying to tear the system down. That's what they told you in their campaign speeches. That's what they want to do. They want to tear it down. House Republicans are standing in the gap. We are not going to let that happen. And we had all the Republicans gathered up this morning, and I gave them the best locker room speech I can muster, because now is the time. We know America is not perfect. It's never been. But we've been in a gradual process of making a more perfect union for almost 250 years now. We're going to continue that. America's created more prosperity. It's lifted more people out of poverty. It's expanded more opportunity and innovation than any other country in the world. It's not even close. This is the greatest nation in the history of the world. It's not even close. Look at any objective factor. You hear me say it all the time. We're the most free, most successful, most benevolent, most prosperous nation that's ever been. And it's not by happenstance. It's because we're built on very firm foundational principles that the Marxists and the socialists have disdain for. What are the principles of America? I mean, it's not a rhetorical question. You all should be able to answer it. Things like individual freedom, limited government, the rule of law, peace through strength, fiscal responsibility, free markets, human dignity, the sanctity of all life. Why? Because it's articulated in the nation's birth certificate and in the Declaration. It says right there in the second paragraph. We hold these truths to be self-evident. What is a self-evident truth? It's something you have to know. It's obvious. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. It does not say just born equal. It says created equal by someone. And it's our Creator, God, who gave us our inalienable rights. Among those rights, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Such a profound statement. When they did that 250 years ago, they were saying something, the bold proclamation of a self-evident truth. And the implication is that every single person is made in the image of that Creator, because the guys that wrote that, the men that wrote that, the founders that wrote it, were students of Scripture. And they understood, because everybody's made in the image of God, it means every single person has inestimable dignity and value. And your value is not related in any way to the color of your skin or what zip code you live in or what your talents are. It's all irrelevant. Your value is inherent because it's given to you by God. The Marxists and the socialists do not believe what I just told you. They don't believe it. Marxism, Karl Marx, his philosophy begins with the premise that there is no God. The state is the God. The state is the one that gives you your rights. And guess what? When the state gives you all your rights, the state can take the rights away. Nobody's telling all these little young self-described socialists, oh, we'll give you free stuff, but you're going to have to give up your freedom to go along. They don't tell them that. This thing's going to crash and burn. It always has throughout history. And the lesson of the 20th century alone is that tens of millions of innocent people have died because of these crazy, quixotic notions. We have to stand for freedom. We got to stand for America. We got to stand on the 250th birthday with greater conviction, clarity, and consistency than we ever have. I'm glad that millions of visitors here for the World Cup see that. I'm glad they got a little timely reminder. They've given us one. All our faults and disagreements aside, America's filled with the most decent and faithful people. This grand experiment in self-governance has worked because we have adhered to the foundations, and we have to defend them. And that's what the Republicans are doing right now. We're defending the foundations of the greatest country in the history of the world, not against your father's Democrat Party, but now against the Marxists. And we're ready for the fight. I'm telling you, the House Republicans are fired up for this. We're going to win this midterm election. We're going to maintain the beacon of hope and freedom and opportunity that this country has always been. Indeed, as our first Republican president Lincoln said, and as Reagan repeated, America is the last best hope of man on the earth. I'm up to fight. These guys are up for the fight. This chairman's up for the fight. All our colleagues are. I'll take a few questions. Yeah.
Speaker Johnson, in the process of this press conference, President Trump announced that he is canceling the bill signing for the housing bill that you all were just talking about. So he's canceling it until the SAVE Act is passed. All of this House is already passed with bipartisan support. Minor importance that it pales in comparison to the SAVE Act. What is your reaction?
Yeah, my reaction is, truth of the matter, I spoke to the president for 20 minutes before I went in and gave that rousing speech to the House Republicans this morning. He and I've talked about this a lot. He has expressed the priority and the preference of the Save America Act. We share that. We passed it 3 times in the House. The latest version was passed a few months ago, and it has proof of citizenship to register to vote, and the proof of showing a photo ID when you show up to vote. Basic issues that 90% of Americans agree. 70% of Democrats think you ought to have a photo ID to vote, and citizenship to vote in an American election is already in the law. But we have to enforce it because you got a few blue states that don't do that. The president believes in election integrity. He talks about it all the time, and we do as well. In act and deed, we have stood for that. We've passed the Save America Act again. Here's this. Let me finish this. This is very important. That is the top priority. Because if you do not have safe elections in this grand experiment in self-governance that we have in a constitutional republic, you don't have anything. And we've got to ensure it. We have to press for election integrity measures. That's why we've made it a top priority. It has been stuck in the Senate, and here's why. Because no Democrat in the House or Senate will vote for the Save America Act. Those two things I just told you, they vote against that every single time, and they will. Why? You ask that. That's a rhetorical question. You should go ask them the actual question. Why? Are you against proof of citizenship and a photo ID? Why is that? They can't give you a cogent answer. The reason is they do want to allow for cheating and fraud in the elections because it is the only way that the Marxists can win. They cannot win on their ideas. That's why this is so important. The president is to us. So how does that tie into housing? He's laser focused on Save America Act, as most common sense Americans are. The only path, I think, to get that done, because you're never going to get 7 Democrats to join 53 Republicans in the Senate to do that. They will not do it. Chuck Schumer will never vote for that or release any Democrat to do it. You have to put it on a reconciliation bill. We believe that if you create a grant program that ties it to reconciling the budget, and you allow blue states, if they come to their senses and they want to avail themselves of election integrity proposals and ideas and policies, they can draw down from a federal fund and use those funds. We're willing to invest heavily in that. And House Republicans will put together a reconciliation bill, Reconciliation 3.0, that will have that. I talked the president through that in detail this morning, as I have in the past, and he said, can we do it? I said, we can, if the Republicans will stand together. We're on the line right now to defend it. Hold on. So that's what we're going to do. The president said, I want to see some progress on it. I said, I'd love to show it to you. We got a meeting today and some more coming up. And so he decided, and I didn't announce it, I wanted him to announce it, but we're delaying this. As you know, he has a window of time before he has to sign a bill, and he's going to use a little bit more of that window of time, and we're going to go through this together. Now, the housing bill is a great product because this guy right here fought like a warrior poet to defend our principles. It did have a lot of Elizabeth Warren's preferences and policy provisions in the original Senate bill, but that's why we spent months and months and months doing the tug-of-war, and we wound up having 85%, that's my estimate, maybe more, of the housing, of the final product is housing conservative priorities and policies. And the other things that are in there are not consequential. Not as consequential as all the great things that Chairman Hill outlined. I mean, we're addressing it's transformational legislation because we're addressing the affordability problem in housing that, as he said, has persisted since COVID. When interest rates are high and costs are high, it makes the barrier to entry so high that young families can't get into houses anymore. That's not a Republican or Democrat problem, it's an American problem. So Americans are fixing it. And so we're going to reduce regulation so builders can build. We're going to limit institutional investing in the housing market. We're going to bring the American dream back within the grasp of hard-working American families. Critical to do, great policy. The president, when we go through the details of the bill, he's going to understand that it's a good product, and certainly something that fulfills his promises to bring down the cost. Interest rates is another big priority of his and all of ours, and I think the new Fed chair will do that. We get the economy humming again. We keep the Strait of Hormuz open. We keep gas prices down to earth. This economy is going to take off like a rocket, y'all, because in 2025, as Scott Bessent said, the Treasury Secretary said months ago, 2025 was like setting the table. The feast and the banquet in the economy is in 2026. We were doing that in the first quarter. We had the Iran skirmish. We settled that thing out. We're cooking with gas. We love to do it, yeah.
So is it your understanding that President Trump is going to sign the housing bill at a later date? And how much later can it go? Because as you said, affordability is huge for Americans. This is a key bill to do it with.
Yeah.
If it doesn't get signed by the
You're talking about days. You know the window of time for, yeah, it just passed last night, right? So 10 days is my estimation. He'll do it within that 10-day window. So, yeah.
Speaking of the rule of housing rights, the Supreme Court is going to rule on policies this week on President Trump's challenge for prices. When it comes to Republicans, as you said, and the White House are celebrating the U.S. international team, whose top scorer is of references. How should Americans square what looks like a celebration of immigration with efforts to criminalize preferences?
Yeah, so like all good things, they can be abused, and birthright citizenship goes back to the root of the country, the history of the tradition. You look at the original intent of the Constitution and the founders and what they were doing, of course, they were facing a very different set of circumstances than we're facing now. We know that it's been abused in recent years because people have literally just come over the border just to have a baby so that they can avail themselves of the social welfare system of America. As I mentioned earlier, we're the most benevolent nation in the history of the world. This must be done within reason. And so that's why the arguments were presented to the Supreme Court. Is it time to reevaluate that? We'll see where the court comes down on it. I think they're going to look at that as originalists as they are as textualists. I think they're also going to consider the factors that are at issue and the strength and stability of the country. The president makes some very compelling arguments. A lot of people do, and we'll see how that shakes out. So I don't think it's inconsistent at all. I think we can celebrate immigration, legal immigration. We are a nation of immigrants, as we all recognize. My grandfather came over on a boat from Sicily with 8 siblings and started a fruit stand, you know, and I'm the Speaker of the House. Only in America, okay? But we embrace that. We know that that's part of our history, but we also expect that people will come, they will follow the spirit and the letter of the law, they will assimilate to our country and not try to transplant Sharia law and all these other things and change who we are. And I think that's a very important thing for American identity, and I look forward to the court's opinion. Yes, sir.
Last question, guys.
Well, when you're talking about the grant program to make that part of the reconciliation bill, what kind of funding are you talking about here?
Stay tuned. We're working through that, okay? Doing a reconciliation bill is a very complicated process of consensus building, where we have a collection of ideas that I think every Republican certainly agrees with in principle, and they want to make sure, we all want to make sure, that no Democrat can go out and say we cut any service. They absolutely lied to you breathlessly for months about the first reconciliation bill, what it did. Strengthening Medicaid, putting in program integrity measures and making sure that it's there for the people that actually are eligible for it and use it, and getting fraudsters out of the system and young able-bodied men who are gaming the system and riding the wagon and illegal immigrants off the system is what we did. Democrats lied about it, said that we took Medicaid away from people. It's just simply not true. We strengthened it for the people that need it, deserve it, and are legally allowed for it. We're going to make sure that what we put in this bill is ironclad, ironproof, and can get every vote. And I'm very optimistic about it. There's some big priorities for the country and America, and sadly, no Democrat will give a vote for any of that, because they just showed you what they're about last night in those elections, and there's more of that to come, I fear. It is a very sad, dark harbinger for the future of America, but I will say this, and let me leave you with this thought. This election, this midterm, I said it's unlike any other in the past. There's no playbook for this. We're in uncharted waters. This election is a bridge election. And let me tell you why we're hopeful. Because when the Republicans win in November and we hold this majority, no matter how big the majority is, we can deal with small majorities. We've been doing that, all right? I think it'll be larger. But when we hold the majority, no matter what the number is, then we get to 2028. Let me tell you what's coming next, the presidential cycle. How many of you know the Democrats have a much more shallow bench than Republicans do for the presidential cycle? We're going to have a great year in 2028. And we're going to hold the White House, the Senate, and the House again. Then we're going to get to 2030. And you know what's going to happen in 2030? The census will happen, and it will reflect the mass exodus of population out of the blue states like New York, New Jersey, California, these socialist utopias that they're trying and everybody's fleeing from. You know where they're moving? Texas, Florida, Tennessee, the Carolinas, the red states. So when the census reflects the population shift, there's a reapportionment of congressional seats, and guess what's going to happen in 2030? The red states are going to get a bunch more House seats. We're going to be back in a time where we can build a larger majority, we can hold the republic, we can keep it for 100, 200, 300 more years, should the Lord tarry, and we will send the Marxists packing. That's not who we are in America, and we're looking forward to November. Thanks for being here.
It's terrible, at least.